Paul, what was your role and your duties when you were working at Buckingham Palace?
So I was based with the Royal Protection Command from 1998 to 2004, and my role was to provide armed protection to the Queen, Prince Philip and Prince Andrew when in residence at Buckingham Palace, and to oversee guests coming in and out, obviously following correct security procedures.
Was it a job you liked?
Yeah, yeah, it was a good job. I suppose police officers in this country would call it a cushy job, because you're not on the streets rolling about with drunks. You're dealing with, the royal family.
Are they easy to deal with?
For my time now, Prince Philip could be a bit tetchy sometimes, and throw a few expletives at you. The Queen was wonderful, very polite, respectful. Unfortunately, Prince Andrew was totally different. He could fly off the handle at the smallest thing. He would be abusive. He would shout. He would swear. So we had a particular issue with Prince Andrew.
And what would he be flying off the handle about?
For example, if the officer's on the gate, because sometimes they're dealing with things, they're dealing with guests, and he suddenly turns up. Usually we get a notice from his protection officer in the car who's with him that they're coming in. Sometimes it'd be a case of we haven't got the gates open quick enough. So if he has to slow down for a small minute, he would shout out the window, "You effing buffoons," and stuff like that. So there was no leeway. If it wasn't done right for him, then he would fly off the handle.
And what was your response to that?
We made numerous complaints regarding his attitude, because we're there to protect him, and the staff are there to look after him. The maids and the servants are there to look after him, and there's no reason whatsoever why a person with a royal title should be verbally abusive to his staff. But unfortunately, not many people understand the hierarchy within the palace. It's an archaic system. So it's a very, very old system. It's not like if you worked in an office and you swore at someone, that'd be dealt with. In the palace, it's totally different. People are too frightened to take the complaints higher up the chain. Bearing in mind Prince Andrew was the Queen's favourite, no one would dare, make an issue with regards to his attitude.
Is he an intimidating figure in his own right?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, I can give you numerous incidents of us doing our job and basically being lambasted for following procedure. In so much so that we used to break the rules for him in order to have an easy life, if you want to call it that.
Like what sort of rules were you breaking?
So, for example, he used to have a lot of young ladies come to the palace during up to about 5 o'clock, his sort of office working hours. So what would happen is at the front of the palace there's a security post called the North Centre Gate, and that's where all the appointments for the day are held. So there's another security post within the palace. All members of the royal family, their personal household, would send down the appointments for each royal. They would be then transferred to us, so we would know who's coming in at what time to see who. So the procedure would be, they would present themselves to us at the North Centre Gate. We would check their ID, ring up to check the book to make sure their name's in the book, and then send them up to the next security post, where they would be met by the member of the household for that particular royal. Now, Prince Andrew followed that procedure to a degree, but then after 5 o'clock, when the working palace closed down, his private guests would turn up. We were not privy to the names of the women turning up. So basically that would mean we were letting people in, we didn't really know who they were, which is contravening a strict security protocol. We should know who is coming into the palace and have some kind of record. And on one particular occasion, the procedure was, we got used to it. So a lady would turn up, she would say, "I'm here to see Prince Andrew." We would call his valet or his footman. They would usually come down and meet the anonymous female and take them into the palace. Sometimes we would let them walk across the forecourt into the middle of the palace where the Duke's private door is, and they would make their own way to his apartments. On one occasion, a female attended the North Centre Gate and said she was here to see Prince Andrew. He'd just come in half an hour before, so we knew he was in residence, but we couldn't get hold of his valet or his footman, so we had no confirmation, because we do get people turn up at the palace saying they've got an appointment for the Queen. They haven't. They're just sort of mentally challenged. So there's that issue we have as well. People can turn up and say they're here for an appointment, but they haven't got one. So we politely apologised to the female and said, look, we can't let you in at the moment. We need to get confirmation. So she said, oh, I'll ring him on my mobile. So she rang Prince Andrew on her mobile, and he must have been looking out the window because there was 3 of us standing there. One of my colleagues was quite a large officer, and he's the one who took the phone off the lady. And we could hear Prince Andrew. I mean, I don't know if you want me to use the expletives, but basically he said, listen to me, you fat lardy ass cunt. Let my guest in, I'm going to come down there. We all heard it, and even the female guest went bright red. So obviously we apologised to her, she apologised to us, and we just let her in. And that was one example of when we are trying to do our job. We're trying to be, safeguard members of the royal family, and Prince Andrew didn't understand that. As far as he was concerned, we've caused him a problem. And yeah, it was just constant with stuff like that with him.
When you say young ladies, what ages are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked this many times. I would not put any of them young ladies under the age of 20. They would be 20s upwards. I've always said that. There was a constant flow of females visiting Prince Andrew late in the evening, whom we were not privy to their names.
So, what amongst the protection officers? What was the banter about Prince Andrew and his entourage of women? The number that were coming in.
We obviously thought it was a bit of a boy, and the joke was he should have a revolving door in his bedroom. It was that sort of attitude. I mean, he would get his protection officers to drive some of these females home. And to be quite honest with you, last time I looked, Royal Protection Command isn't the taxi service. So he misused police resources for his own ends. But obviously, protection officers aren't going to say no. They're going to do what they're told, because you're now in an environment. You're part of the royal household. You're not part of the Metropolitan Police anymore. You're now in that bubble, and your loyalty is to the royal family, and that is how it's perceived.
Did Prince Andrew have a nickname at that time?
Well, his official code, so if he was to come into the palace, he would his call sign was Purple 41. But he did have a nickname, but it's a bit rude for me to tell you one I'll tell you, but you're not going to be able to air it. It was just called, do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
It was called the cunt. Plain and simple, because unfortunately he upset everyone he come across. He was the most unpopular member of the royal family while I was there, and he was just rude, arrogant. I mean, his sense of self-entitlement was breathtaking. Police officers having to retrieve his golf balls in the back garden. I mean, what's that all about? So he treated staff, in a demeaning manner. I mean, the teddy bear story, I went public with that not to embarrass him or for a joke or for salacious gossip. That was a clear example of bullying and coercive behaviour by someone who's a senior member of the royal household. I mean, no one should have to put teddy bears back on a bed using a laminated card for instructions. And if they get it wrong, they're going to get shouted and screamed at. I mean, that's just odd behaviour in anyone's eyes.
Tell me about the teddy bears, the number and where they were.
The issue is the fact say if you went home to your partner and he or she handed you a laminated card of all their shoes and said, I want them in that particular order every day, and if you don't get them shoes in the right order, then I'm going to shout and scream at you, you're going to think they're odd. You're going to think there's something wrong with them. So if you now transfer that to a senior member of the royal family, whose teddy bears had to be put in a certain position on their bed, and if they weren't, he would lose his temper and start shouting it. And they're only young maids, they're only young. You're talking 18, some of them, and they've come down from different parts of the country, and they're living in flats within Buckingham Palace. So they're only kids, and to have to deal with someone like that who's verbally abusive and shouting is not right. So how I first come across that was every weekend the royal family go to their Windsor for the weekend. So the Queen will take her 10 dogs, get in her Jaguar, and she will go. Prince Philip will go separately, and then Prince Andrew will leave later on. So at the weekend, we go into their personal apartments and we check all their personal attack alarms. So obviously they've got a number of them dotted around their apartments in case an intruder came in. They can press the button and we will come. So we had to test all those. Hence why we had to go into Prince Andrew's living quarters to test his. And obviously I was with an inspector at the time, and I think a couple of PCs or a sergeant. And he explained, we looked at all the teddy bears on the bed. We thought, okay, a 40-year-old man with about 50 or 60 teddy bears on his bed. All right, fair enough. And then he said, there's a card in that drawer there, and showed us the card. It was a laminated picture of all the teddy bears. And then he explained that if the teddy bears aren't put back in this certain order, Prince Andrew would start shouting and swearing at the maids. So obviously, that just the alarm bells are ringing then on that sort of issue of why would anyone be that sort of, controlling?
Why would anyone have 50 or 60 teddy bears on their bed?
Well, apparently it was 72 more have come forward. So, so a maid has come forward after I did the RTV interview. She actually confirmed what I'd said, but said it was, I think, 72. So obviously I didn't stand around counting them all. I just estimated 50 or 60. I was 10, 12 out, which wasn't bad really.
Pretty close. But still, do we have any answer as to why he has so many?
No. I mean, I think what happened was he got quite a lot of stick over that. But the bottom line is it comes down to, I mean, we didn't really know much about coercive and bullying behaviour 20 odd years ago. And, it's only recently that people, in domestic violence situations, have come forward and people are starting to analyse what could be construed as coercive behaviour. So looking back to me, that's definitely something that's not right to have staff put teddy bears back in a certain order, otherwise you're going to lose your temper. That's just not right. That's a whole issue that Prince Andrew has, really, that he needs to talk to someone about, I think.
If I can just get you to give me your observations of one of Prince Andrew's particular guests, Ghislaine Maxwell. What did you observe about her in terms of visiting Prince Andrew?
So I first became aware of Ghislaine Maxwell in, I think, 2001. When I told you about the Privy Purse office rings down and gives us all the appointments for that day and we write them in the appointment book. On this particular occasion, my colleague, a police officer in the Privy Purse department, he gave me the list of fixtures for the day, and then he said, there's a guest coming at lunchtime, 1 o'clock, for Prince Andrew, but don't put her name in the book. So I said, okay, why? He said, it's Ghislaine Maxwell. So I said, fair enough. I didn't really pay much attention to it then. I said, fine, if that's how it is, that's how it is. So I went out, told my colleague, and then we sort of discussed between each other, that's not really a good look having Robert Maxwell's daughter visiting Buckingham Palace when the Queen's in for certain reasons. So anyway, about 1 o'clock, she turned up in a chauffeur-driven Range Rover. She just glanced at us. The chauffeur spoke, said it was Ghislaine Maxwell, and we just showed her straight into the quadrangle where the Duke's private entrance is. Sometime later, we were relieved from post, and we made our way through the palace gardens. And just as we got to the Queen's private apartments, which overlooked the grass, we saw a picnic being laid out by the footmen and the maids. Quite a big picnic. So we went on our way, went to the police lodge, had our break. As we came back, we noticed it was Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell sitting having a picnic. And again, we said, I wonder if the Queen knows who's sitting on her lawn, having a picnic with her son. So we thought it was a bit, if the press got hold of it, it might be an issue. But so that was my first when I first noticed her. After that, she became a fairly regular visitor. Personally, I'd say within over the 2 years, I'd seen her come in about a dozen times, and she was just waved through. There was no stopping, asking for an appointment. She would just go straight through, which obviously is not procedure. Procedure is you'll stop, we'll check if there's an appointment, and then if there is, you'll be allowed in. So to myself and my other colleagues, we got the impression that they were in some form of intimate relationship.
Did she ever stay the night?
That I can't say. I can't say. Obviously, sometimes I would have gone off duty at 10 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I can't say if she ever stayed the night.
What do you think the issue is of Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell having a relationship?
Well, I mean, if you look back now, I mean, if you look at half a dozen of his close friends are now convicted sex offenders, including Ghislaine Maxwell. The lifestyle that he led back then, he has questions to answer now, unfortunately, whichever way you look at it. I mean, if one person had found out that one of their friends was a sex offender, you'd think, that's out of the blue. But to have 5, 6, that's, to me, that's uncomfortable reading. And I think what Prince Andrew he's trying to do now is distance himself from Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think it's completely delusional because there's pictures of him and her in parties, and she stayed in Balmoral. And I know for a fact of my colleagues, one of my colleagues saw her come in and out 4 times in one day. So at the very least, they had a close working relationship, a close friendship. For Prince Andrew to say, I hardly knew her, is he's delusional.
What is your response to claims by Prince Andrew that he did not know his friends were sex offenders?
Well, he spent a lot of time with these people, and I'm not judging Prince Andrew because he's got to answer for his own actions. But I've only ever commented on what I saw and what I perceived, and so I'm looking at a man. And he's just a man at the end of the day. Take away the royal title, because a lot of people are under the perception that because you've got a royal title, you're not capable of wrongdoing. And there's a lot of people out there that think that, and you can't live your life like that, thinking people. That's how Weinstein and Epstein got away with what they did, because people thought they were so rich and powerful they wouldn't be doing stuff like that. Well, Prince Andrew, with what I saw with young ladies coming in and out, we weren't allowed to know who they were. We got the impression he liked the young ladies because he was in his 40s at the time, So he obviously had a thing for young women. He liked partying. There's plenty of pictures on the internet, unfortunately, with him sweating profusely as well. And so he's now in a position where they are close friends. They were close friends. He can't distance himself from the fact, because the pictures on the internet, there's statements, there's witnesses, and I think he's pulling at straws. What his personal habits are in the bedroom, I have no idea. But all I can say is, by the balance of probabilities, the amount of friends, his close friends around him, are all convicted sex offenders. He has questions to answer.
Did you or your colleagues ever observe Jeffrey Epstein going into the palace?
I personally didn't, and to be fair, I wouldn't have recognised him. I wouldn't have recognised him back then. It was only because of who Ghislaine Maxwell was at the time that I made a note and remembered her. So it's possible that Epstein could have visited the palace, but I certainly didn't see him when I was there.
Did any of your colleagues travel with Prince Andrew to New York when he visited Jeffrey Epstein?
Not the colleagues I worked with, but his protection officers would have gone with him. And basically, because he's a senior member of the royal household, that trip would have been planned from an office within the Royal Protection Department. They would have contacted the state police or whoever runs protection in New York, and given them the Prince's details of where he was staying, his travel arrangements, for the purpose of the Americans checking out the address to make sure it wasn't owned by Russians or anything like that. Well, obviously it would have come back that it was owned by Jeffrey Epstein, who was a convicted felon. And even though Prince Andrew knew this, and he would have been made aware of this by the protection team and probably the royal household, he still went against advice and visited Epstein for 3 days.
You're saying that the royal household would have been red flagged on this?
Yes, they should have been, definitely, because any member of the senior household, a royal family, when they go abroad, as I said, it all has to be planned, even if it's an unofficial trip. He's the Queen's son, so he would have to have checks done on the premises. As I said to you, that he would get a team of protection, government protection probably, on the other end to pick up and assist his officers. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes. It's not just him flying out and no one knows where he's gone. They need to know where he's staying, where the nearest police station is, where the nearest hospital is, what teams are going to take turns on looking after him, and all those factors come into play. So my issue is that once Epstein's premises and the fact that Epstein was a convicted felon was flagged up through the American side to our side, then surely they would have told Prince Andrew this, and they probably would have told the household. But Prince Andrew, being Prince Andrew, obviously clearly ignores advice, and has gone to visit a convicted felon on his own bat.
But who in that household would know? I mean, would mum and dad be told about this? Would the Queen know?
Again, I'm not too sure if there's anyone who's got the guts to speak to the Queen about it. I'm pretty sure if the Queen knew, she would have said no. Pretty sure she would have said no. I mean, as I said to you, if you understand that Prince Andrew is a very intimidating figure, so he's not the type of person to cross within the royal household. There's many instances of him being abusive and bullying staff. I mean, a lot of people have come out recently with their stories. So he's an intimidating figure within the royal family. And so no one's going to stop him from visiting Epstein, and they didn't. But the problem he's got no defence. No normal person, no reasonable person would visit a convicted sex offender, especially for 3 days.
In regards to protection officers travelling with Prince Andrew, would somebody have travelled with him to Jeffrey Epstein's island? Would they have been privy to what was going on that island?
Right, protection officers go everywhere with Prince Andrew, as they do with most senior royals. They go everywhere. So he would have had a protection officer or two, depending, wherever he went. So would they have been privy to anything that went on in there? I'm not too sure, because they might have had their own quarters. So they might have had a building or somewhere away from where Prince Andrew was with Epstein, etc. So they may not have been privy to anything that had gone on.
Why do you think no one's come forward to say, yes, we saw Prince Andrew with Virginia Giuffre at Tramps nightclub. We saw him dancing with her.
I mean, it's a long time ago. That's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, they might have recognised Prince Andrew, but do you really take notice of the people around him? You'd be looking at Prince Andrew most of the time, and I think that's the problem. Again, with protection officers, there's been requests for their notebooks, so they make notes. If they're going to go out with the royal family, they're going to make notes where they're going, what places they've been to. Well, these books are kept for probably 6 years, maybe 8 years maximum, and then they're destroyed. So any sort of police records, I suggest, are destroyed. In fact, a colleague of mine who came forward, who says that he believes he was on duty on the night in question and that Prince Andrew came back to Buckingham Palace that night. Yeah, so a colleague of mine came forward. I spoke to him, and he went to the press. Basically, he believed that on the night in question, he was on duty and Prince Andrew came back unexpectedly to Buckingham Palace, because once the royals go, we know they're out. They don't come back. They're gone. They'll go to wherever. And on this particular occasion, he turned up out of the blue. And for some reason, my colleague was pretty sure it could have been the night in question, but he applied for his duty records and they'd been destroyed, apparently.
So when you say the night in question, what do you mean?
The nightclub incident. It stuck in his head, and unfortunately, he's too frightened to come forward and be identified. He's frightened of the backlash. He's frightened of scrutiny. Same with other colleagues that I've worked with. They're the same. They've got businesses, and no one wants to get involved. I'll be honest with you. You're going up against the royal family, so there's a lot of fear amongst ex-police officers of coming forward. They've signed non-disclosure agreements as well, so they're worried about that. They're worried about their pensions. There's a lot of people out there with information that are just too frightened to come forward.
So do you believe that there is information there that would support Virginia Giuffre's claims against Prince Andrew, that your colleagues are witnesses to something, but they're just too scared?
You know what, I honestly couldn't say whether or not they'd be witnesses to that incident or Virginia Giuffre, but they would certainly have information about his whereabouts, possibly, his comings and goings. We've discussed it many times, but as I said to you, no one wants to, come forward. They're just too concerned for their own safety and their own sort of, not safety as in they think they're going to get harmed.
Very quickly, what is your response to Prince Andrew's claim that at the time he was with Virginia Giuffre, that he was unable to sweat?
Yeah, I think with Prince Andrew, from my own personal 6 years that I was working there, I can honestly say that he's been protected by the royal household and the royal family. And when I say protected, I mean he's never had to answer for anything. He's never been told he's done anything wrong. He's never been held to account on anything. And unfortunately, he did the interview with Emily Maitlis on BBC, and it sort of showed the general public that Prince Andrew's not very bright. And his problem is he's saying he doesn't sweat when there's photographic evidence out there that shows him sweating profusely. So that argument in front of a civil court is going to go down like a lead balloon. He's not thinking through his... He hasn't got a defence, let's be honest. He has not got a defence.
Have you ever observed him sweat?
Yeah, there was one incident. I recalled it because, and I said this again, 14 years ago. I was on duty in the back garden, and he came out with his PPO, his protection officer, with his golf bag, dropped a dozen golf balls on the floor right next to my post. I was about 10 feet away from him, and started whacking the golf balls towards the lake. There's a big lake at the back of Buckingham Palace. So the protection officer went up about, 20, 30 yards, waited for him to run out of balls, and then started throwing the balls back to him. And I remember that because I just thought, I've seen it all now. And then a footman came out with a towel and a drink, and Andrew wiped his brow.
Why would you remember that moment of sweat?
Because he had a police officer picking up golf balls. And so I had to stand out of my post and watch this because I'm not allowed to... If a member of the royal family is in the garden, you have to stand to attention. And obviously I was observing, and I just couldn't believe that a police officer was acting as a ball boy. So obviously that stuck in my mind. It was a hot day, it was a hot summer's day. I was sweating, and he was whacking golf balls. And if you're wiping your brow, what are you wiping off your face? As far as I'm concerned, he was sweating, and that's what I saw.
Prince Andrew denies any involvement with Virginia Giuffre, and he claims that on the night she says that she was made to have sex with him, that he was at Pizza Express at Woking. Do you have an opinion on that claim by him?
Well, I think if a member of the royal family went to a Pizza Express restaurant, there'd be a lot of people who would remember that, especially the staff. And I don't think any of the staff members have actually came forward and remembered Prince Andrew at any stage visiting Pizza Express. So you've got an issue with credibility on the fact that there's not one witness that have come forward to confirm this. So at the moment, again, it's his word. And that's all he's got. He's not brought any witnesses forward that were there. Again, with regards to protection officers, there would have been a protection officer with him, as was in Tramps, if he's gone there. So if it's a private function, not necessarily would they have had to go and do an advanced party and check it. They would have just gone with him, escorted him there, if he actually went inside. But there are no witnesses to confirm that. So that is just what he is saying.
Do you believe him?
I always keep an open mind. I think it's the right thing to do. Keep an open mind and let the facts speak for themselves. Personally, he's shown himself to be dishonest in the things that he's saying, particularly the sweating and the other things he's come out with. The Epstein, I went there to say goodbye to him. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, who's going to believe that? He's got a credibility issue now. So I believe that he's got questions to answer. And I believe he's gonna have a problem when he goes to court, because he's never been challenged before, and this time he's going to be challenged by a legal team that know what they're doing, not an interviewer, and that's a totally different ballgame.
If Prince Andrew wanted to go to Woking, he wanted to take his daughter to Pizza Express, could he not do that without a protection officer, without the royal household knowing?
Oh yeah, I mean, the royal household don't know his every move. I mean, that would be down to his PA. They would have his appointments book and write down where he's going for that day. Do you know, his day would be organised. So they'd say at 6 o'clock he's going to Pizza Express, so they know where he's going. And not forgetting, if he's leaving Buckingham Palace and he's going to be staying at Windsor, then all the maids and all the servants would have to know, so they can prepare his bedroom and prepare his meals, so they would be ready for him to as a guest. on that particular day. So potentially, are there notebooks within the palace? It's 20 years ago, they may well have been destroyed, but it would have obviously, like the PA would have had a notebook where she would have wrote down, times and places that he'd visited. But PPOs, protection officers, will always be with him wherever he went. So if he went, to the shops, they would go with him.
So what you're saying is that there at least was, and there may even still be, a paper trail that would show if Prince Andrew went to Woking or not.
Well, potentially. As I said, it depends on what records the royal household keep. I suggest if there were any records, they're not going to be about now. Metropolitan Police, for police records, I'm pretty sure it's between 6 and 8 years they keep them. So any potential evidence within notebooks from protection officers would have been destroyed. So the only paper trail I could see potentially is his personal assistant at the time, who would have had diaries of his movements on each day. Would he or she have kept them for so long? Maybe. I don't know.
Paul, what motivates you to speak out?
Basically, obviously, I got myself into a lot of trouble when I was a Royal Protection Officer. I basically was dealing in shares. I became a millionaire while I was a Royal Protection Officer in my own right before I got in trouble. And I basically started investing police officers' money as well. And it came to a point where I was just hemorrhaging money. It started off well, we were making money, and I was dealing with millions of pounds, and the stress got to me, and I started losing money. And I just didn't have the guts to admit it to myself or my colleagues that it had gone wrong. So I turned to fraud to try and keep the boat afloat. And all that succeeded in doing was ruining more people. I went to court. I was held to account for my actions, and I spent 6 years in prison. And whilst I was in prison, I learnt a very sort of valuable lesson, and that was always be honest to yourself and others, and then you can't go wrong. And the only reason that I'm speaking out now is because I'm standing by what I said back in my court trial. I have not gone out to the press in any way, shape or form to put myself out there. A few years ago, what I said back in 2009 wasn't really relevant to today's situation with Prince Andrew. Over the years, what I said has now become relevant. And so the press started using bits and pieces from what I'd said. So I thought, at the end of the day, it's what I said. I've got to stand by what I said because it's 100% true. I've been corroborated. A lot of the stuff I've said has been corroborated by independent witnesses anyway. So I'm on no revenge mission. I just feel that Prince Andrew has got a case to answer on all levels, including bullying. And I suffered at the hands of Prince Andrew. Young girls suffered at the hands of Prince Andrew, his maids, other police officers and members of staff. But none of this has ever been looked into because people were too frightened. And also it's important for the public around the world to understand just because you've got a title, and as I said previously, it does not mean that you are a good person. So the real Prince Andrew, his personality needs to be put out there, and people can make their own decisions about what kind of person he is, listening to the evidence that comes forward from other people.
So you're sure that his mistreatment of you, as you describe it, isn't what's motivating you today, that this isn't about revenge? You're not trying to kick him while he's down?
No, it never has been. As I said to you, no one's ever come forward to challenge my story, and all I've done is come forward and backed up what people have asked me. I just think that it's important that people understand who Prince Andrew is. He's a very unpleasant person. Does it sound like revenge? Well, I'll tell you what. Read some of the statements that have come forward from other people about how he's mistreated staff. They can take the reins if they want. I've said my piece, and luckily, I put myself on offer. I knew I was going to come in for flack when I did ITV because of my past, but luckily other people have come forward. It's encouraged other people to come forward, and that's all I can hope for. So if they want to tell their story, I'm quite happy to sit back and let them carry on.
Where do you think Prince Andrew got his nickname Randy Andy from?
Well, I let enough people, ladies through the palace. That's one of his nicer nicknames. But yeah, he had that nickname because he was always with women. If you go on the internet, there's women hanging all over him in certain nightclubs, and some of them not quite what you'd expect of a senior member of the royal family pictures to be taken. He had a healthy interest in young women. I saw that. My colleagues saw that. and we experienced it because we were the ones that let him in. So yeah, that's standard.
At issue is whether he had an unhealthy interest in young women, and to that point, do you believe Virginia Giuffre?
Right. Well, I don't want to get involved in between who's right and who's wrong. I'm not here to say I believe Virginia or I believe Prince Andrew. I'm basically saying, look, this is what I know, and you're asking me if I believe, that something went on. I can't be honest with you. I can't say that I do. I think that's for a court to decide, because we can all have our own opinions, but I don't think it's healthy. The man's going to trial. And I know things have come out and I've said things, but at the end of the day, he's got questions to answer. But what I will say is that one thing that did make me uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable when I was working there, was another story that I told when we were on duty and it was late, and we got a call saying there's a taxi coming in and 2 young women for Prince Andrew, same procedure, let them straight in. So I said, okay, no problem. So they turned up, and they were dressed in they were scantily clad dresses, very short, very low cut tops, heavy makeup, in their 20s, drinking from cans of Coke, laughing and giggling. They may have had a drink. So we just let them in. My colleague said, sort of looked and said, I'm not sure that's the right attire for young ladies coming in to visit a senior member of the royal family, because they were not dressed in, like other women would be dressed in a certain way, suits or whatever. These 2 ladies were, dressed very, scantily. So he commented on the radio to the other officers. So by that time, everyone wanted to see who these people were. So when they came out from his apartment after about an hour, the officers went down to the side gate where they were exiting to view these 2 individuals. Unfortunately, we didn't realise Prince Andrew was with them, which is usually it's quite rare for him to escort 2 ladies down, because he usually sends the footman down. So he came out, we hid, and he actually walked them out onto Buckingham Gate, which is the main road outside Buckingham Palace, and stood there with them for 5-10 minutes and hailed a taxi for them with no protection. I've never ever seen him do that, and we wondered as to why he'd gone to that much trouble. So that was a strange thing. The rest of the story goes, some of my colleagues said they were high class call girls. I don't believe that, but that was what the story was, and he made it worse by standing with them and putting them in a taxi, unprotected. Never seen a member of the royal family do that before in my life.
Why do you think these people's names weren't recorded? Why was it important that there was no record of who entered the gates of the palace?
I don't understand why it would be so secretive. I mean, the trouble I'm having thinking about it now is the position he finds himself now in. I mean, who were we letting in back then? We don't know. Why did he feel the need for us to breach security protocol by keeping secret people's names? I don't know. But it just doesn't ring true. I mean, no other member of the royal family breached security protocol. It was only Prince Andrew. So the way he conducted himself obviously stuck out in my mind. And I think his actions back then are quite relevant to what he's facing now. He led quite a hedonistic lifestyle. And unfortunately, it's come full circle. And now he's got questions to answer that he doesn't want to answer. So,
do you welcome the fact that he is being forced to answer them?
Yeah, he should be held to account for as I said before, a number of issues. I mean, if he's got himself in a position like he has now, facing a serious lawsuit, then he's only got himself to blame. And as I said, I know what's happened with him. I mean, he's not the brightest tool in the box. I mean, just because you're a member of the royal family doesn't mean to say you're a brain box. I mean, he's led a very, very cushy lifestyle. He used to use the royal helicopters to fly in the garden. He used to go golf in the helicopter. He had a very easy life. And he was protected, as I say, and that was the problem he's got. He's not protected now. And I think a lot of this stems back from the way he was protected. Because this sense of entitlement and this sense that he can treat people how he wants that are lower than him is what's got him in this trouble now.